You are watching the world 24/7 on the NDTV network. I'm Parmeshwar Bava. A busy foreign policy agenda is on the horizon. The finer details are all lined up for you. Let's begin with the top stories you need to know. Narendra Modi has been sworn in as the Prime Minister of India for a third consecutive term. We look at the foreign policy goals for this term as the neighbourhood and economic cooperation remain the key focus. French President Emmanuel Macron has announced he will dissolve Parliament and call new legislative elections after exit polls showed his alliance suffered a heavy defeat in European elections to Marine Le Pen's far-right National Rally Party. Far-right parties rattled the traditional powers in the European Union and made major gains in parliamentary elections as voting wrapped up on Sunday on the final day for the next 5-year term. The Israeli military rescued 4 hostages in a special operation in the Nusrat refugee camp in central Gaza. And Gazan authorities said that 236 people have been killed meanwhile and 400 others are injured. Panama is set to become the first to evacuate an entire island community due to climate change. Well, our big focus. Narendra Modi has been sworn in as the Prime Minister of India for a third consecutive term. But this is the first time he has been sworn into the role as the head of a coalition government. In addition to Mr. Modi, a total of 71 ministers, including 30 cabinet ministers, 36 ministers of state, and 5 ministers of state with independent charge were also sworn in. So far, though, not a single Muslim minister has been sworn in. But Mr. Modi had announced during his election campaign the goals for his third term, the principle being that of making India the world's third largest economy by 2029. For achieving that, his list includes economic and bureaucratic reforms, attracting foreign investment and global supply chains to India, increasing the share of manufacturing in the economy, among others. Basically, the overarching goal is to make India a developed economy by the year 2047. Foreign policy was not an issue in these elections, but as analysts have highlighted, some indication of the NDA's thinking on foreign policy issues was available from its manifesto. India's leadership and presence in global forums, including the success of the G20 chaired by India, figure in the manifesto. The neighborhood first policy was reiterated. No mention was made specifically of the US, but collaboration with countries in the Indo-Pacific was mentioned, with growth and security for all as a goal. China too was not mentioned, but accelerating the development of infrastructure on the India-China border was, and support for Israel on the issue of terrorism. India's aspiration for permanent membership of the UN Security Council figured in the manifesto. Meanwhile, substantial gains of India's soft powers such as International Yoga Day and Ayurveda also found mention in the NDA manifesto. But what will add heft to India's foreign policy? Well, to further discuss what India's foreign policy priorities would be under Modi 3.0, we have with us former diplomat Ashok Sajjanhar. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us on NDTV. Okay. Now, while Chinese and Pakistani leaders were not invited, other top South Asian leaders attended the oath ceremony. Sir, is it fair to say that the neighborhood continues to be priority one and is a greater push for the Indo-Pacific cooperation on the radar going ahead in this term?
Yeah, thank you very much, Parmeshwar. I agree with you. I think neighborhood is going to be priority number one, as it was in 2014. You would recall all the SAARC member states, their leaders were invited, as also the Prime Minister of Mauritius. In 2019, the BIMSTEC leaders were invited, as well as the Prime Minister of Mauritius, and at that time, the President of Kyrgyzstan, who was the chair of the Central Asian countries. And this time also, we've seen basically the focus is on neighborhood as well as Indian Ocean, because this has become Indian Ocean and Indo-Pacific more broadly has become an area of greater contestation, because China has been spreading its tentacles and has been expanding its footprint in this region. So yes, this would be an important element. China would continue to be the most formidable challenge as far as India is concerned. You are right. Pakistan and China were not invited for 2019, although Pakistan was invited in 2014. But Pakistan also relations have been really frozen from the time of 2019 after the Pulwama attack and the Balakot strikes took place in February of 2019. So there also our policy has been very clear. Terror and talks don't go together. And if you are going to launch any terror attack against us, then we are not going to sit quiet, and we are going to take measures against it, as we did in surgical strike. The other aspect, I think, is, again, as you said very correctly, and I quite agree with you, is going to be the focus on economic collaboration and cooperation. India is participating in getting into FTAs with, whether it is the United Kingdom or it is the European Union or the GCC, Gulf Cooperation Council, and there are some others of the same nature. So I think focus is going to be on that. We have seen the product-linked incentive scheme that has been there, enhancement of manufacturing. So I think all these are going to be very important elements, because the target is Viksit Bharat 2047. And
Right,
I think
sir.
the government is going to work towards that.
We are aware that FTAs are important for India to raise exports, but we're also now seeing that countries are more interested in trade agreements in the areas of digital economy and e-commerce. In that sense, which direction do you see India headed in? Well, we hear that India will continue with new FTAs and would like to conclude with the ones with the UK, for example, and Bangladesh, among others.
Yeah, I think you make a very valid point. I think these are areas in which India has strengths. Digital and fintech areas are, and e-commerce are areas where India has proven its strengths. And over the last, even during the challenging times of COVID, we were able to take a large number of policy decisions, reforms that we were able to introduce in the country. And they have yielded us with very good results, whether it is opening of more than 500 million bank accounts, or payments through mobiles, or payment of subsidies directly into the accounts of the beneficiaries. And I think the world over, India has been able to establish its leadership in these particular areas.
Yes.
So here, I think definitely we are going to move forward. Also, Parmeshwara, India has shown in recent years, when we concluded the SEPA, the economic partnership agreement with CETA, it is called, economic and trade agreement with Australia. And that had been hanging fire for a long time. Then we took barely a few months to conclude our agreement with the United Arab Emirates. We also entered into the I2U2, India, Israel, UAE,
Yes.
United States. We are also members of IPEF, Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, meetings of which are taking place. So the point I'm making is that India has been very proactive, and that the world has seen that India is serious about this. Even in other areas, for instance, signing the 10-year contract, maintenance and development contract of the Chabahar project with Iran. So I think India's seriousness has been made clear to the world, and I'm sure that India is going to show results in that. We are going to see, of course, the Prime Minister travels next week to Italy for the G7.
Busy diplomatic schedule indeed, sir. But, sir, as we wrap, as Mr. Modi kickstarts a third term, what would you say are some of India's weaknesses that can be converted into strengths going ahead? Yeah,
so I think first is in terms of our relations with China, as I said, that is the most formidable challenge. I think we need to do something about it. But as they say, you can't clap with one hand. You have to have China also playing ball.
Indeed.
And we've seen over the last 4 years since Galwan, China has refused to play ball. The second is, India's economy is growing 8.2% last year and growing very successfully. So I think that is where on the economy we need to focus so that our movement forward is very rapid, particularly in the area of exports,
Right.
because exports are a very integral element of development of growth of our economy.
As always, sir, thank you so much for joining us on NDTV.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, Parmeshwar. Thank you.
Well, as we discussed, a busy foreign policy agenda is on the horizon. Mr. Modi's term began with a high-profile oath-taking ceremony, as we covered extensively, attended by leaders of 7 neighbouring countries from the western arch of the Indian Ocean to the Himalayas. Now, the new government will engage in bilateral meetings with each visiting leader. The focus, we're told, will be on strengthening connectivity as well as partnerships. Next on the agenda, you must know, is the BRICS foreign ministers meeting in Russia, scheduled for next week. But as the MEA is yet to announce portfolio allocations, details on India's representation are awaited, but this meeting is crucial for India's strategic interests within the BRICS grouping. Mohammad Ghazali has been tracking the latest developments for us. He joins us live at the moment. Ghazali, the BRICS foreign ministers meeting, the G7 summit in Italy, the US National Security Advisors visit, the SCO summit. I mean, I think it's fair to say it's a packed diplomatic schedule and a busy few weeks of reporting ahead for you.
Oh yes, the swearing-in ceremony itself was the reflection of the foreign policy of the Modi 3.0, or say the NDA 3.0 government. And why we are saying this? Because by inviting the countries alongside the Indian Ocean, the ones who are located alongside the Indian Ocean, the Modi government has yet again given a message that even this event of swearing-in ceremony gives a foreign policy message. Back in 2014, when he was sworn in for the first time as a chief minister, he had invited the head of his states of the SAARC countries. Then in 2019, it was the head of his states of the BIMSTEC countries, those who are located alongside the Bay of Bengal. And this time around in 2024, yesterday, 7 heads of states who are located in and around the Indian Ocean, they were invited. And the very controversial figure of Mr. Moizu, we all saw him hitting the headlines in the last 6 months. First, after getting elected as the president of Maldives last year, his entire campaign was on an anti-India or India out campaign, asking the Indian government to remove its troops or bring back its troops. And then we saw the social media trolling of Indian Prime Minister by the Maldivian parliamentarians, a heated exchange between the two governments. And then Maldivian tourism taking a hit as Indians on the social media started trending to boycott Maldives as a tourist destination. But things started getting back on track last month when Maldivian foreign minister came and met the Indian External Affairs Minister, Mr. Jaishankar. And then out of nowhere, this invite came as a surprise for many, but Mr. Moizu confirmed his participation. He attended the swearing-in ceremony, and today we are expecting that yesterday in the dinner program after the swearing-in ceremony, the heads of the states of those 7 nations who had participated in the oath ceremony also met the Prime Minister at Rashtrapati Bhavan after the swearing-in ceremony. Now, as far as the schedule is concerned, certainly we have the G7 conference in Italy, and after that you have a peace summit in Switzerland, though the Prime Minister is not visiting to Switzerland for the peace summit, but he is certainly going to attend the G7 summit in Italy, where the heads of other states will also be there, like Joe Biden, Rishi Sunak, and other top leaders will be attending the G7 summit as well. And after that, you have, as you rightly mentioned, you have ASEAN summit, you have SCO summit, you have BRICS. So the entire schedule is packed for the Prime Minister in this year. And as we know that how a global conflict in different regions of the world has also occupied the headlines, and that is going to be one of the key features of this government, because all this while Mr. Modi has been calling the world leaders, be it Putin or be it Mr. Zelensky in Ukraine, that this is not the time of war and we should go for peace. We are seeing the crisis in Middle East also expanding for the last 7 months. So amid all this, India's role is very important. all the global leaders have recognized India's presence and its relevance, not only just for the economic reasons, but also as far as a global conflict or peace is concerned. India has played a very vital role even in the past, and being a growing superpower in the sense, its role assumes very much significance. It has a significance on the global platform. So that will be a point to keenly watch out for in this term of Mr. Narendra Modi.
As always, Ghazali, thank you so much for joining us and breaking down the details for us. Well, switching tracks, far-right parties made such big gains at the European Union parliamentary elections that they actually dealt stunning defeats to two of the bloc's most important leaders, French President Emmanuel Macron and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. On a night where the 27-member bloc palpably shifted to the right, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni more than doubled her seats in the EU Parliament. And even if the alternative for Germany extreme right party was hounded by scandal involving candidates, it still rallied enough seats to sweep past the slumping Social Democrats of Chancellor Olaf Scholz. Undoubtedly, however, the star on a stunning electoral night was the National Rally Party of Marine Le Pen, which dominated the French polls to such an extent that Macron immediately dissolved the national parliament and called for new elections.
This was a dramatic decision by the French president to call for snap general elections after what took place on Sunday with the results of the EU elections. Here in France, the far-right National Rally Party did, as expected, getting more than 30% of the vote, and they will send around 30 MEPs to the European Union's Parliament in Brussels. Emmanuel Macron's party Renaissance trailing well behind with just barely 15% of the vote, and they will send only 15 MPs to the European Union Parliament. Now, Emmanuel Macron clearly feels the time is right to try to regain the initiative at parliamentary level here in France in the National Assembly. He doesn't have a majority at the moment. He will be hoping to get one to be able to have more what he describes as clarity and tranquility in governing here in France. But the National Rally Party, if their results at EU level are replicated at French domestic level, well, they could easily be the biggest party in Parliament, and we could see Marine Le Pen as the French Prime Minister. That would put the French President in an extremely difficult position. Looking at the wider results across the European Union, we have seen some successes for parties on the far right. For example, Giorgia Meloni, the Italian Prime Minister, her Brothers of Italy party. However, there have been some setbacks in the Netherlands. The far-right Party for Freedom didn't do quite as well as expected, nor did the far-right Chega party in Portugal. Results seem to suggest that they will be coming in fourth position in Portugal. Overall, the centre-right seem to have done the best in the European Union election, and they will constitute the greatest number of MEPs in the next European Parliament. Ross Cullen, NDTV, Paris.
Right, Ross Cullen there with a roundup of all the political action from Paris. But meanwhile, the Israeli military rescued 4 hostages in a special operation in the Nusrat refugee camp in central Gaza that Gazan authorities said killed 236 people and injured over 400 others. Meanwhile, Israeli War Cabinet Minister Benny Gantz has said his party was quitting the government after threatening last month to leave over the lack of post-war strategy for the Gaza Strip. He also accused the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of mismanaging the war effort and putting his own political survival over the country's security needs. But what does this mean for the Israeli Prime Minister? Well, the move does not immediately pose a threat to Netanyahu, many experts say, because Netanyahu still controls the majority coalition in parliament. But the Israeli leader becomes more heavily reliant on far-right allies, who oppose the latest US-backed ceasefire proposal and actually want to press ahead with the war. For a quick update, we have with us Arab Affairs correspondent from Israel TV, Erin Singer, joining us from Tel Aviv. Thanks so much, Aaron, for making time for us on the World 24/7. Straight up, does Benny Gantz's departure pose an immediate threat to the government?
Yes, it seems that there is a major threat to this government, especially after Minister Gantz and his party have announced that they are leaving the emergency government tonight in Israel. It means that from now on, Netanyahu has only 64 seats in the 120 seats in the Knesset. But it's not only a matter of number of seats in the Israeli parliament. It's much more than that. Mr. Gantz was the umbrella of this specific government, of this right-winged government headed by Netanyahu, Ben-Gvir, and Smotrich. And once Mr. Gantz and his allies are leaving the government, it means that it is going to be much harder for Netanyahu and his allies in the government to confront the international court in The Hague and everything that has to do with the international sanctions that the international community is now putting on Israel in order to put an end to the war in Gaza.
There are fresh calls for a ceasefire deal to save the remaining hostages and end the war. But Mr. Netanyahu has increasingly distanced himself from a plan that's also been announced by the US president. Aaron, do you see this war ending soon?
Mr. Gantz in his speech said, and many Israelis were surprised to hear that this war is going to last years, not weeks or months, but years. And the Israeli public is getting used to the fact that this is going to be a very long war. The thing is that if there's something that that the majority of the Israeli public is willing to see right now, is some kind of a deal that will put an end to the crisis with the Israeli hostages. Israelis have witnessed yesterday the release of the 4 Israeli hostages, and it made the Israelis feel much prouder than they had felt in the last few months since the war started. Netanyahu is not willing to put an end to this crisis. He's not showing any sign that he's going to make a deal with Hamas. And it seems for many Israelis that Netanyahu wishes that this war will keep on going without even talking about the hostages that are still being kept by Hamas.
Well, Aaron, thanks so much for joining us with the latest from Ground Zero. With that, let's turn our attention to the United Kingdom. Britain is heading for the lowest general election turnout in modern history. This is what pollsters have warned, with the main parties and their leaders leaving many voters politically homeless. The warning of mass apathy follows Techne UK's polling this week, which actually suggests that even in the middle of an election campaign, with just a month to polling day, 20% of people had already decided not to vote. The poll of about 1,645 people, voting-age British people actually, by Techne for independent media reveals that while the won't vote percentage of the population is normally high in non-election periods, it is expected to drop significantly during the short campaign, the period between the dissolution of Parliament and election day. But apathy is particularly high among young voters who say their problems on issues such as housing have not been addressed by the major parties in the campaign. In fact, among Gen Z and millennials, 38% have decided not to vote, almost double the national average. And according to Techne, 30% of 18 to 34-year-olds are not even registered to vote in the United Kingdom. Well, in other news, Panama is facing a climate change reality check. On a picturesque island nestled in the country's Caribbean embrace, roughly 300 Guna families are confronting a heart-wrenching decision: either leave their ancestral home or be swallowed by the rising sea. This actually marks a historic moment because the Latin American nation is set to become the first to evacuate an entire island community due to climate change. An estimated 63 communities along Panama's Pacific and Caribbean coasts face a similar fate in coming decades. This is what the Associated Press is reporting. Rising sea levels threaten to erase their existence, turning vibrant coastal communities into submerged memories. As always, news and updates continue right after this very short break. Welcome back. Carlos Alcaraz beat Alexander Zverev in a 5-set thriller in the French Open final to become the youngest man to win Grand Slam titles on all three surfaces. The 21-year-old battled cramps to recover from 2-1 down in sets and winning a gripping contest 6-3, 2-6, 5-7, 6-1, 6-2 after 4 hours and 19 minutes. Alcaraz added the Roland Garros crown to the Wimbledon title he won against Djokovic last year and the 2022 US Open. What's next? Well, he will head to the Australian Open next year with the chance to become the youngest man to complete the career Grand Slam. And finally, one team had Jasprit Bumrah, the other didn't, and that was that. That was the difference. Jasprit Bumrah led the way as India defended a target of 120 with a sensational bowling performance and beat arch rivals Pakistan by 6 runs in New York.
Dad. What's it, David?
The stage, the occasion, the big battle in the Big Apple. A tricky start for India as King Kohli departed cheaply, who tried to send one out of the Nassau County Stadium but instead gave an easy catch in the deep. Akshar Patel and Rishabh Pant tried to steady the innings with Rishabh taking the initiative as he went after Haris Rauf, a Pant special. But the Pakistani bowlers came back strongly. Akshar cleaned up, followed by Surya.
Well, it's gone straight.
And Dubey, who went cheaply.
Got a wicket.
And then the big wicket of Rishabh Pant.
Up and over, has it gone high? There's a fielder underneath. Taking his 50th.
With Jadeja back in the hunt for a golden duck, India were in deep trouble.
And the chip up.
India managed to reach just 119 on a tricky and inconsistent Nassau County pitch. India's mighty batting lineup cut to ribbons.
That bowled out India here for 119, and it's a very good effort.
Pakistan started cautiously as both the openers tried to negotiate the early swing.
What a shot that is.
A miserly spell from Jasprit Bumrah stemmed the flow of runs, resulting in Babar edging one to the slip.
Patel.
A seemingly down and out India had hope as Usman Khan and the dangerous Fakhar Zaman departed in quick succession. And then Bumrah castled the gritty Rizwan. It all came down to the last 2 overs, 21 needed, and in came Bumrah once again. Just 3 runs given and he got the wicket of Iftikhar Ahmed.
It's taken in field, you'll get runs.
18 needed of the last over and Imad Wasim departed in the first ball.
Oh, he misses it.
India for the first time ever managed to defend their lowest ever score in T20 World Cup, courtesy the heroics of Boom Boom Bumrah.
Done the job.